Holy Week Meditation by Yoga Devotion, Good Friday. Today we have a longer introduction to our Good Friday practice. So find a comfortable seat and listen to this introduction before we begin the Good Friday practice. A lot happens between the Last Supper on Maundy, Thursday, and the cross on Good Friday. Jesus withdraws to pray in the Garden of Gethsemane. His prayer, Abba, Father, for you all things are possible. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I want, but what you want. Jesus' disciples fell asleep. Judas betrays Jesus with a kiss. A confrontation with Roman guards ensue, and Jesus heals a man whose ear had been severed in the confrontation. A sham trial where Jesus is physically and emotionally abused. A disciple denies knowing Jesus as the crow cries 3 times. Convicted of treason, Jesus trudges towards Golgotha, carrying the cross he will hang on. The women disciples walk with him, including his mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, and the other women who supported him in his ministry. There are many opportunities to imagine yourself in this part of the Passion narrative, if you dare. But it is hard. Christian churches around the world will decide how to present this difficult narrative. Painful as this story is, we, post-resurrection Christians, hear this story as it sets the stage for us to enter into a prayer vigil on Saturday. The prayer vigil on Saturday is a time to attempt to understand anew the theology, God knowledge, of the cross on Easter morning. We as humans struggle with pain and suffering, personally, corporately, and that is one thing that makes this story hard to enter into. There are at least 2 divergent theologies that Christians ascribe to regarding the Passion. In the Passion narrative, one theology is called the Theology of Glory, and the other is the Theology of the Cross. According to Luther, Theology of Glory looks to minimize painful things and look at works as a way to avoid them. Luther says, the theology of glory does not know God hidden in suffering. Therefore, one prefers works to suffering, glory to the cross, strength to weakness, wisdom to folly, and, in general, good to evil. In other words, this theology assumes a position that we are in control, not God. In contrast, a theology of the cross understands the cross to be the ultimate statement of God's involvement in the world on this side of heaven. A theology of the cross accepts the difficult thing rather than immediately trying to change it or use it. It looks directly into pain and sees it for what it is, sees it authentically, instead of calling evil good and good evil. It identifies God as hidden in the suffering. What this means for us, what this theology means for us, is that God enters into our fear, our pain, and our anxiety. This is a hard day for Christians regardless of their theology. So it makes sense that the pose that we chose for today's meditation is known as the hardest pose for most people to enter into. Today we will meet God in our meditation through Shavasana, often known as corpse pose. The Sanskrit word Shavasana is broken down as shava, or corpse, and asana, posture or seat. It also has an alternative name, murtasana, which means death. In Hatha Yoga, Shavasana holds the intention to release tiredness from the body after a physical yoga practice and to calm the mind while still being alert and present. In faith-integrated yoga, we set our intention in Shavasana to be open, aware, and receiving of God's promised presence. Before we begin, I'll invite you to designate a comfortable, quiet area somewhere in your house. Select props that will help you be comfortable in corpse pose. Perhaps a pillow under your knees or a towel for under your neck or head. A blanket to cover yourself with, or something to cover your eyes. One helpful prop to corpse pose is to hold a lightweight, something like a baggie of rice or a stone in the palm of each hand. It helps us to ground ourselves, to be present. Today, purposely, there is not anyone demonstrating the pose, so that you can place yourself in the story, lying under the foot of the cross. You may pause the video here if you need to gather props, and then we will prepare together in our breath to hear the Good Friday story, a reading from Walter Wangerin Jr.'s novel, The Book of God. Today's meditation will close differently. You will hear a tearing sound to symbolize the sound of the curtain tearing in the temple. And then 3 chimes. You may stay in meditation for as long as you want, but when you come out, turn on your favorite side into fetal pose. Pause. This is a pose of rebirth, of resurrection, that we join into as post-resurrection Christians, ones who know the end of the story. We pause there before we come to a seated position. Then close in silent prayer, a prayer of your own choosing. Let us now prepare for our meditation. Let us prepare to enter the story and experience the passion of Jesus. For our pranayama or breath work today, we return to the simple, slow, relaxed breathing. Inhaling and exhaling, noticing our own rhythm, and noticing how it calms our nervous system. We enter this prayer practice with gratitude. Pranayama is our life force, and we imagine that we are intertwining our breath with God's breath. Our breath does not disappear, but becomes one with God's healing breath. A breath prayer, if you choose to use it, is to inhale, remember me, and exhale, in your kingdom. Settle. Relax your shoulders. Soften your neck. Let that softness travel up your neck, over your scalp, and smooth out your forehead. Create space between your eyebrows. Soften your eyelids. And release the tiny muscles around the bridge of your nose. Relax the jaw, letting the lower jaw shift away from the upper jaw, and release the tongue from the roof of the mouth. If it's available to you, gently inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth. Friday morning dawned with uncertainty. It was the end of the latter rains. Clouds had crept in from the sea and covered Jerusalem in a sky as undefined as the sea itself. A gray weight under heaven. Dawn, then, was a lessening shadow, an odor of moisture, and a dirty light. Now and again, a thin, drizzling rain fell. The trial had happened. Jesus was convicted, and the people cried, "Crucify him, crucify him." Jesus is dragging a heavy wooden beam up the center of the street. Two soldiers tried to lay it on his shoulders, but the weight of the rough wood startled the lacerations in his back, and the pain became so intense that something like light exploded in Jesus' skull, and he slipped to the ground in a faint. Now he is cradling one end of the beam under his left arm and bumping it, the other end, over the stones of the street. Each stone is a Sinai. There are spike holes near the extremities of the beam. It has been used before. Jesus is moving north, slowly, toward the garden gate. He is wearing his own robe again, and his tunic, though it has lost its shape, scabrous, is befouled by human discharge. His hair, because he bends so far forward, hangs nearly to the ground. The sandaled feet of a centurion are walking in front of him, just within his vision. He is following those feet. There is a sound of wailing behind him. He has heard such lamentation before, sometimes genuine, sometimes conventional. For Lazarus, for Jairus' daughter, for the son of the widow in Nain. The beam sticks between two stones. Jesus groans and drops to his knees, and the lumber hits the ground. He doesn't blame the crossbeam to which he will be nailed. He just can't carry it anymore. Motion makes his skin scream, and beneath all, his stones are weak and his bones are tired. Someone is parting his hair and drawing it back from his forehead. He is able to see. An elderly woman, her eyes swimming in tears, wipes his brow with a rich linen cloth, then presses it into his hand. And the centurion seems kindly enough, middle-aged gruff. He has spoken to the soldiers, Gauls by the look of them, who even now are placing the wooden beam on the back of another man. Jesus is overcome with gratitude. His chest heaves with weeping. He rises and finds his body very light. He walks forward. They have come to the hill. They have come to Golgotha. And then by spikes and human strength, Jesus, nailed to the cross, is lifted bodily from the ground. Shoulders climb ladders behind the stout pole, hauling him up and allowing him to swing from his arms alone until he can be lashed to the pole and a cross formed. The soldiers descend, and in front of them they bend his knees and drive a third spike through his ankles. His muscles convulse. He begins to tremble as if he were very cold. His teeth chatter. He bites his tongue but doesn't notice, except that there is a taste of blood in his mouth. Father. Jesus speaks through the bloody mouth and through the shivering, even while one of the Roman soldiers climbs the pole behind him. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. The soldier hangs a shingle at the very top of the cross. Painted on it in Hebrew and Greek and Latin, by order of Pilate himself, is the legend: Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. Now troops responsible for these crucifixions settle on the ground and begin to divide the criminal's cloth among them. They cast lots for the various pieces. Rain falls steadily now, and the breeze is stiffening. Nevertheless, pilgrims still travel up the road into the city. They see the inscription above Jesus and grin. Certain Pharisees are standing by, nudging one another. He saved others, they laugh. What do you think? Can he save himself? Ha ha! The kind of diversion is common at crucifixions because it takes a man so long to die. Jesus' shoulders are pulling apart. He can scarcely hear human voices over the shrieking of his own pain. If you are the Son of God, prove it by setting yourself free. Hey, King of the Jews, jump down from that cross, and we will believe in you. The criminal hanging to his left is laughing. Messiah, Messiah. The man is gasping in genuine laughter. Ha ha! Now I meet Messiah. Been waiting all my life. Ha ha! Been waiting since the days of Daniel. And look, he shows up dying. Well, Messiah, he hisses at Jesus, save yourself. And save me too. How can you say that? The other criminal is not laughing. Don't you fear God? We are justly condemned, but this man has done nothing wrong. Jesus, he whispers. Jesus, roused by the devotion in the utterance, lifts his head and looks. The man's tendons are cracking through his neck and shoulders. Jesus of Nazareth, you healed my mother of bleeding, the criminal whispers. Doctors nearly destroyed her. I hated them. I hated everyone in authority. But you said that her faith had saved her. Now I am touching you, Jesus, as she did. I am begging you to remember me when you come into your kingdom. The poor child, frightened of dying, casting his life to the one crucified beside him. Jesus struggles for breath and answers, "Truly, today you will be with me in paradise." All at once the wind dies. Black clouds close like fists in heaven. Even the beasts are silent, and travelers hurry toward the city now. A storm is coming. Jesus hopes his eyes and then sees familiar women at his feet and involuntarily cries out, "This is the sorrow. This is suffering greater than whips and spikes and a universal hatred." His mother is there. Mary, still supporting herself by gripping John's arm, is looking directly at him, pleading with him. Her face is at the level of his waist. She is crying. She is 50 years old, gray and frail, and her eyes are begging him, "Why? Why are you dying?" Jesus wants to howl his grief to the black skies. He cannot touch his mother anymore. He cannot receive her love anymore. Oh God, in his condition, he is not worthy of love of anyone, and this is the will of the Father? "Woman, woman, woman," he murmurs to his mother. He rolls his head toward John. "He is your son now." To John, Jesus whispers, "And she is your mother. Please take her away and care for her." He shuts his eyes. He is occupied by elemental things, life and death. His body hangs heavily from the extended arms and the metal spikes at the ends of them. Whenever he moves, his bones make grinding sounds, and the pain descends into his pelvis, and he loses control. He groans in human filthiness. Jesus opens his eyes again. His mother and John are gone. The day is dark with a thick darkness. Thunder rumbles deep in heaven. There is a pause of unnatural calm. Then lightning forks the belly of the clouds. The crash follows immediately, and all at once the wind is shrieking down the Jewish tombs. Trees bow and rise again, and leaves are torn forward like women's hair. The road to Jerusalem clears swiftly of people. The soldiers huddle on the lee side of the hill. It is noon. And now, when the flashes of lightning themselves are extinguished, the earth is utterly black. Darkness, an hour. While the fierce wind makes the rain sting like sand on the skin, and no one exists in all the world but Jesus and his wretched body. If he should call out, who would hear? The wind pulls and snaps his hair like a banner. All his wounds have tongues. They are screaming in pitches higher than hearing. Darkness, another hour. Darkness coiled and thick, itself a power entholing him, binding his chest and his heart and his mind. Jesus can neither think nor breathe. He is sunk down. The great engulfing flood of the dead, the deeps that boil beneath creation. He has been swallowed by chaos. This is the place. It is here that he is dying. Darkness, the third hour. And now he knows complete obliteration. Jesus has been blotted out of the book of life. Not even God is here. Eli? No, not even his Father, whose will he is even now obeying. The Father who has loved him from the beginning, whom he has loved, whom he has called Abba. Eli, Eli. Where is his Father now? Has become the Son so foul that even God cannot look upon him? Is it Jesus of Nazareth who howls out? None but him. He can hear the words. They are his own words. He howls them up to heaven. My God, he shrieks. My God, why have you forsaken me? Silence. The universe is silenced by that cry. Jesus throws his body outward from the cross. His ribs splay apart in the straining. His shoulders form hollows at the pits of his neck. His mouth is an empty canyon. Someone says, was he calling Elijah? I don't know, says someone else. Wait and see. A third person is running through the darkness toward the crosses. Jesus allows his body to droop. The weight of it draws out his arms, closing the cage around his lungs, constricting his breathing. He can breathe only in faint pants, but he whispers, I am thirsty. Yes, yes, cries the person who had been running toward him. Yes, drink this. On a long stalk, this most civil individual raises a spun to Jesus' lips. He sucks and tastes a common wine. He drinks. Jesus has never drunk so sweet a drink in all his life before. The rain has ended. The wind has died. A little light shifts down like flour from the clouds. It is finished, Jesus gasps. Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. His body falls far forward. His head sinks down between the wings of his rising arms. His heavy black hair, his long, wet hair, falls over his head like a curtain. An everlasting sigh issues from his open mouth. And that is the end. Jesus dies.